GI map test is a molecular test in that it looks for the DNA or the genes of the specific organisms that we're concerned about. And we look for the DNA with specific probes of a whole list of pathogenic organisms, including bacteria, viruses, protozoa. But we also look at commensal organisms, meaning the beneficial organisms, and we look at opportunistic organisms, the ones that are not overt pathogens, but they're not necessarily overt beneficial organisms. But if they're given the opportunity to overgrow, which happens in many people, they can create problems, including this higher incidence of autoimmune disease and so forth. So we're looking for the specific genetic markers or signatures based on the genomes of these organisms. So it's not a SNP test or a gene test in like where people may be used to looking at the genes of the subject or the patient. We're actually looking at the genetics of the organisms that are residing in their intestinal ecology. The GI map test is a quantitative PCR or qPCR, sometimes called real-time PCR test, which really differentiates it from some of the for instance, direct-to-consumer stool tests out there, which are next-gen sequencing tests. They're also looking at genes or DNA, but they're doing it in a different way that actually doesn't quantitate the level of DNA that is found. They're reported more in a percentage of the total DNA. It's a little bit gets a little bit deep in the weeds, but it doesn't tell you how much. It just tells you how much of a certain organism is there in relation to the other organisms. Our test goes beyond that and actually measures the amount of DNA catch. So we have certain cutoff thresholds, which if it passes a certain threshold, that is an indication for clinical treatment. And that's exceedingly important for a diagnostic test meant for clinicians to use to make decisions on patients, because those other next-gen sequencing tests, like a ubiome, for instance, are never meant to make clinical decisions. Those are research tests. They're really not meant for that purpose, even though they've been used for that inappropriately. The recommendations on the GI map results, which if you're an affiliated Designs for Health user of the test, you will also get recommendations on what kind of products you might want to consider using to change what's going on in the GI microbiota.
So what do I think of the GI map? Yeah, really impressive. I think, you know, it's been a long time coming for us to be able to see a lot more information, and certainly in my practice I look at the genetic component, I look at all the, I really want to see what's good and bad with the gut, not just what's good. And so I think there's a lot of application here for the GI map, pretty well for all our patients. I spend a lot of time talking biochemistry, going through results and explaining what they mean. So I think there's a lot of relevance there when it comes to, I can say, okay, here's your inflammatory markers, and here's the bacteria, and this is the effect that we could see perhaps from an inflammation point of view, or a increased cytokines or whatever. So I think if we get more information, with the studies around it and how we can talk to our patients and back it up with medical science, I think that's really powerful stuff.
Well, the GI map test is very essential, I think, in clinical practice, particularly now and in the future, because it really allows for that personalised medicine. So as a practitioner and educator, we're always looking for the next step on how we can have better care for our patients and better results overall. So what I'm thinking is combining this with clinical practice, we can personalise their medicine more effectively and really enhance their healing. I'm very excited about the Designs for Health products. As you know, in clinical practice there are a lot of products around, and what I like about these products, they're formulated with scientific literature, as well as the classic traditional knowledge of what we know about nutritional and herbal medicine. The combinations are awesome. The studies behind it, the Evail technology of how it improves the absorption into the cell membrane, for example, the cell itself, is revolutionary. And the formulas that we're looking at, particularly with Designs for Health, are specifically designed for the betterment of care and based a lot on, like I was saying before, scientific and traditional knowledge and also clinical results. So combining the two together, far more clinical results.